Welcome to Biography with Plutarch, where we embark on a fascinating journey through the lives of historical figures to uncover the intricacies of human character and the timeless lessons that shape us. Today, we delve into the captivating life of Cleopatra, the last active pharaoh of ancient Egypt, whose name has become synonymous with cunning, beauty, and power. Born in 69 BCE in the vibrant city of Alexandria, Cleopatra was the daughter of Ptolemy XIII Austerlitz, a ruler of the Ptolemaic kingdom, which was a Greek dynasty that had ruled Egypt since the death of Alexander the Great. The Ptolemaic court was renowned for its opulence, intellectual pursuits, and intricate web of alliances and rivalries with other Mediterranean powers. It was within this complex and cosmopolitan environment, where scholars, poets, and diplomats from all over the ancient world congregated, that Cleopatra's early life unfolded. As a member of the Ptolemaic dynasty, Cleopatra was descended from Macedonian Greeks, but she was also deeply rooted in Egyptian culture. Her father, Ptolemy XII, was known for his extravagant lifestyle and his attempts to maintain Egypt's independence in the face of growing Roman influence. The palace in Alexandria, where Cleopatra spent her childhood, was a hub of learning, politics, and intrigue, with towering marble columns, grand halls, and lush gardens that seemed to stretch on forever. The air was alive with the sounds of laughter, debate, and music, as scholars and courtiers vied for attention and influence. Cleopatra's mother is believed by some historians to have been Cleopatra wife Tryphena, although the exact identity of her mother remains a subject of debate among scholars. What is certain, however, is that Cleopatra was raised in a household where politics and power were not just matters of state, but also of personal survival. The Ptolemaic dynasty was infamous for its internecine struggles, with siblings often marrying each other and vying for the throne, a practice that would later influence Cleopatra's own ascent to power. This tumultuous family history was marked by episodes of violence, betrayal, and tragedy, which would have a profound impact on Cleopatra's worldview and her approach to leadership. The early years of Cleopatra's life were marked by the tumultuous reign of her father, who faced numerous challenges, including economic troubles, external threats from the Romans, and internal strife. Despite these challenges, Ptolemy XIII was a patron of the arts and sciences, and his court attracted some of the most brilliant minds of the ancient world. It was in this intellectually stimulating environment that Cleopatra received her education, studying mathematics, astronomy, and medicine, among other subjects. Her tutors included some of the most esteemed scholars of the time, who instilled in her a deep understanding of Egyptian history, culture, and traditions, as well as those of the Greek world. One such tutor was the mathematician and astronomer Sosigenes, who is said to have taught Cleopatra the intricacies of celestial mechanics and the movements of the planets. Another influential figure in her life was the philosopher Philostratus, who introduced her to the works of Homer and the great Greek tragedians. These early influences would shape Cleopatra's perspective on the world, fostering a deep appreciation for the arts, sciences, and literature that would serve her well in her future endeavors. Cleopatra's education was not limited to academic pursuits. She was also trained in the political arts, learning the intricacies of statecraft, diplomacy, and leadership. She was taught how to navigate the complex web of alliances and rivalries that characterized the ancient Mediterranean world, where city-states, kingdoms, and empires vied for power and influence. Her tutors schooled her in the art of rhetoric, teaching her how to craft persuasive speeches, negotiate with foreign dignitaries, and inspire loyalty among her subjects. As she grew older, Cleopatra became increasingly aware of the precarious nature of her family's rule and the threats that loomed on the horizon. Her father's reign was marked by controversy and unrest, and the Roman Empire, under the leadership of figures like Pompey and Julius Caesar, was beginning to exert its influence over Egypt. The sound of marching legions, the clang of swords, and the rumble of siege engines were ever-present reminders of the dangers that lurked beyond the palace walls. It was against this backdrop of political intrigue and external pressure that Cleopatra's character began to take shape, forged in the crucible of her family's struggles and the ancient world's grand ambitions. She learned to be resourceful, adaptable, and cunning, skills that would serve her well in the treacherous world of ancient politics. Her intelligence, determination, and charisma were honed through a series of challenges and setbacks as she navigated the complexities of her family's court and the wider world beyond. The formative years of Cleopatra's life were a time of learning, growth, and preparation for the challenges that lay ahead. As she walked through the palace gardens, surrounded by the whispers of courtiers and the songs of exotic birds, she must have felt the weight of her family's legacy upon her shoulders. She was destined for greatness, but the path ahead would be fraught with danger, uncertainty, and heartbreak. As Cleopatra's father, Ptolemy VI, struggled to maintain his grip on power, the young princess found herself increasingly drawn into the vortex of court politics, where intrigue and deception lurked around every corner. The palace in Alexandria was a labyrinth of opulent chambers, grand halls, and secret passageways, where the sound of whispers and plotting echoed through the corridors like a perpetual whisper. In 51 BCE, her father's death sparked a succession crisis, with Cleopatra and her brother Ptolemy XIII emerging as rival claimants to the throne, each determined to assert their dominance over the other. The siblings' relationship was complicated, to say the least, with some historians suggesting that they may have been married, as was the custom among the Ptolemaic dynasty. This peculiar tradition, known as sibling marriage, was meant to preserve the royal bloodline and prevent outsiders from gaining control of the throne. However, it also created a web of complex family relationships where loyalty, duty, and desire became intertwined like the threads of a rich tapestry. As Cleopatra navigated this treacherous landscape, she must have been acutely aware of the stakes, for her own future and that of Egypt hung precariously in the balance. Cleopatra's ascension to the throne was far from smooth, however. Her brother Ptolemy III, who was only 10 years old at the time, was proclaimed co-ruler, and the two siblings soon found themselves embroiled in a bitter struggle for power. The Roman Empire, which had long been expanding its influence in the region, saw an opportunity to exploit the instability in Egypt and began to exert pressure on the young rulers. The Egyptians, proud of their ancient heritage and fiercely independent, viewed the Romans with suspicion and distrust, recognizing that their interests were often at odds with those of the Nile kingdom. In 48 BCE, Pompey, one of Rome's most powerful generals, arrived in Alexandria seeking refuge after his defeat by Julius Caesar at the Battle of Pharsalus. Cleopatra, who was then just 21 years old, saw an opportunity to forge an alliance with the Romans and potentially gain the upper hand over her brother. She famously had herself smuggled into Pompey's chambers, where she attempted to persuade him to support her claim to the throne. The scene must have been dramatic, with Cleopatra, resplendent in her royal finery, pleading her case before the battle-hardened general, who was no doubt impressed by her intelligence and determination. Tragically, however, Pompey's stay in Egypt was short-lived. He was betrayed and murdered by Ptolemy XIII's advisors, who hoped to curry favor with Caesar by presenting him with the general's head. Cleopatra, realizing that her brother's actions had sealed her fate, began to secretly negotiate with Caesar, who had arrived in Alexandria in pursuit of Pompey. The meeting between Cleopatra and Caesar would prove to be a pivotal moment in Egyptian history, one that would change the course of her life forever. According to legend, Cleopatra had herself wrapped in a carpet and smuggled into Caesar's chambers, where she charmed the Roman leader with her intelligence, beauty, and cunning. The two must have engaged in a lively conversation, discussing politics, philosophy, and the arts, for Caesar was known to be a sophisticated and cultured individual. As they talked, Cleopatra must have been acutely aware of the power dynamic at play, recognizing that she needed to tread carefully if she was to achieve her goals. The Roman general, after all, was a master strategist, and his interests were not always aligned with those of Egypt. Despite these challenges, Cleopatra proved to be a skilled diplomat and strategist, navigating the complex web of alliances and rivalries that characterized the ancient Mediterranean world. Her relationship with Caesar remained strong, despite the challenges they faced, and together they worked tirelessly to promote Egyptian interests and secure their positions as leaders in the Roman Empire. The grandeur of Cleopatra's court was renowned throughout the ancient world, attracting scholars, poets, and philosophers from all corners of the Mediterranean. The Egyptian queen was particularly fascinated by the works of the great Greek philosopher Aristotle, and she spent many hours studying his writings and discussing their implications with her advisors. Her palace in Alexandria was said to be filled with the sound of lively debates, where the greatest minds of the age gathered to discuss the issues of the day. As the years passed, Cleopatra's power and influence continued to grow, despite the tumultuous relationship she maintained with the Roman leaders who shaped her world. Her famous declaration, "I will not be led in triumph," would become a rallying cry for Egyptian nationalism as she fought to maintain her country's independence in the face of overwhelming odds. The Romans, after all, were a formidable foe, and their legions had conquered much of the known world. Yet Cleopatra remained undaunted, using her intelligence, charm, and cunning to outmaneuver her enemies and secure Egypt's place among the great powers of the ancient world. The legendary beauty of Cleopatra has been immortalized in art and literature, from the paintings of Renaissance masters to the sonnets of Shakespeare. Her face, with its striking features and enigmatic smile, has become an iconic image, symbolizing feminine power and intelligence in a world dominated by men. Yet behind this facade lay a complex and multifaceted individual, driven by a fierce determination to protect her country and her people. As the years went by, Cleopatra's relationship with Mark Antony, one of Caesar's most powerful generals, deepened, and together they formed a formidable alliance that would shape the fate of Egypt and the Roman Empire. Their love was not just a passionate affair, but a calculated move to secure Egypt's position in the face of growing Roman power. The sun-kissed deserts and lush Nile valleys of Egypt served as the backdrop for their romance, with Cleopatra hosting lavish feasts and ceremonies in Alexandria to solidify their bond. Mark Antony, with his rugged charm and battle-hardened demeanor, was smitten by Cleopatra's intelligence and beauty, while she admired his unwavering loyalty and military prowess. As they navigated the treacherous waters of Roman politics, Cleopatra's diplomatic skills were once again put to the test. She leveraged her vast knowledge of trade routes, economic systems, and cultural norms to forge alliances with neighboring kingdoms and city-states, all while keeping a watchful eye on the rising power of Octavian, later known as Augustus Caesar. The stakes were high, with Egypt's independence hanging precariously in the balance. Cleopatra knew that one misstep could spell disaster for her country, and so she moved with calculated precision, using every tool at her disposal to ensure Egypt's survival. Despite her best efforts, however, the tide of history was against her. The Battle of Actium in 31 BCE marked a decisive turning point, as Octavian's superior naval forces crushed Mark Antony and Cleopatra's fleet, leaving them isolated and vulnerable. As the Roman legions closed in on Alexandria, Cleopatra realized that her time was running out. According to legend, she took her own life rather than submit to the humiliation of being paraded as a captive in Octavian's triumphal procession, saying, "I will not be led in triumph." The scene is said to have unfolded in the grand mausoleum she had built for herself. Surrounded by opulent tapestries and golden statues, with the asp that would deliver the fatal blow allegedly smuggled into her chambers in a basket of figs. Cleopatra's death marked the end of an era, not just for Egypt, but for the entire ancient world. The once mighty Ptolemaic dynasty, which had ruled Egypt since the time of Alexander the Great, came to a close with her passing. As news of her demise spread, the people of Alexandria mourned the loss of their beloved queen, who had fought tirelessly to protect their city and way of life. Her legacy, however, lived on, inspiring countless generations with her intelligence, courage, and determination. Today, Cleopatra is remembered as one of history's greatest leaders, a woman who defied convention and pushed the boundaries of what was possible. Her name has become synonymous with feminine power, intelligence, and beauty, inspiring countless works of art, literature, and film. From Shakespeare's iconic portrayal in Antony and Cleopatra to the modern-day depictions in movies like Cleopatra, 1963, and Asterix and Obelix, Mission Cleopatra, 2002, her legend has captivated audiences worldwide. Yet, beyond the legend lies a complex and multifaceted individual, driven by a fierce determination to protect her country and her people. her unwavering commitment to Egypt's independence, her shrewd diplomatic maneuvers, and her unshakable resolve in the face of adversity all contribute to a rich tapestry of qualities that have inspired countless individuals throughout history. In the end, it is not the grandeur of her palace or the majesty of her throne that defines Cleopatra, but the quiet moments of courage, the calculated risks, and the unwavering dedication to her people. We remember her as a queen who walked among gods and mortals alike, who danced with Roman generals and debated with Greek philosophers, and who ultimately gave her life for the freedom and dignity of her nation. That's all for today's biography with Plutarch. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, remember that understanding the lives of remarkable individuals helps us better understand ourselves.